We're going to start out with gestures again. So today's topic for gestures is transitions. We built a gesture yesterday like this. So we start out with a stick figure, and then we're starting to look for the shape and directionality of these volumes. And I was asking you to use these kinds of shapes like squares. The thigh was a circle, the knee was a square. Notice I'm putting in sagittal planes. This was a calf was a triangle. The foot is a block. Okay, so this is essentially where we started, where we got to yesterday, and then I asked you to go through and fill the gesture in. I asked you to gently shade it. And this helps us see the thing as a singular unit. And then what I like is to go through and establish an outline. So this is review from yesterday. And this outline really lets us look at the shapes, the negative shapes. So like I'll show you a negative shape. So this space here is a negative shape. It's the space that's left. Okay, and today what we're going to work on is we're going to work on our transitions. So for instance, the transition from the chest into the stomach. Okay, here's a really basic block in. Into the hips. Okay, so the transition I want to address right now is from the ribs to the stomach area. And one of the ways that I think is really cool to show that is with this kind of a shape. It's basically a Pringle. You see like a saddle type shape. And a good way to think of it as it's like an 8 on its side. If you take an 8 and you turn it on its side, but if you think of this plane as being far forward and you think of this plane as being the back, and this is the way that the rib cage transitions into the stomach. It comes down and you see how it comes down like that. And so when we're thinking about this shape, if we end it, whatever we end up with the rib cage, if we have a block and we have another block for the pelvic, okay, and now if I transition into this circle with a Pringle, low on the sides and high in the middle. Okay, so that's our first transition. It goes right here. And the form always works like this. If you have, it's like if you think about a pillow, like this, and like this. As the form bends, you'll have squash, which will give us little bumps in here, and stretch, which will make this side thinner. So one of the principles of form coming together is squash and stretch. If we were going to make this into a torso, we could bulk out for the chest. I'm bulking out for the chest. We could turn for the pelvis. Here is the midline connecting those two, and this is round. In the zone in here, we're getting squash, and out here we're getting stretch, and here's my transition like a Pringle. Okay. Okay, now the transition from the stomach into the pelvis is itself it is like, there's a couple of different ways you can do it. One of them is as another Pringle. Sorry about that. Sorry there. One of them is as another Pringle, so we'll come down this time this way and back up and over, and then when it goes to the back, it's thinner. So it has like that. So I can do another Pringle here, like this. And below that, you can do a little triangle. And this works in the front or in the back. So here's my next Pringle. See how that works? And it makes it so that this middle shape ends up doing something like this. it's kind of cool. The middle shape ends up being something like this. And that looks fairly abdominal. I mean, I think that to me starts to feel really abdominal. So that ends up being kind of the middle shape between the pelvis and, okay. So now let's move into, let's move into how the head interacts. And with the head, we start out with a circle, and here's a sagittal. That could be a transverse if I wanted. Well, I'm going to take this head and I'm going to turn it upwards just to make this easy. So here's the head, and I'm going to take the transverse plane and turn it upwards, and I want to turn the face off in this direction. See how the face has moved off into that direction? That will be my coronal. Okay, and now what I need to do is I go from the bottom. If this is the eyes, that's where the nose is, right? The nose would come to about here. And this is where the jaw comes down, and this doubles down, right? And so here's the jaw. So I can always establish a kind of and then don't forget the back shape of the head, okay? And so here we'll do another one. There's the cranial mass, that's the brain case. In this instance, I'm going to turn the eyes like that. Here's the sagittal plane, the plane down the middle. I'm going to cut my sides off the way that we did. Here's my coronal plane right there. Okay, now I'll double down to the nose. The nose ends at the bottom of the circle, and then from here down doubled, that gets us to the chin, and the chin goes all the way back to that center line. So we go like this, and here's our head shape, and this are in perspective, and there's the head shape. Okay, I'm going to clean it out, and from here we connect to there and to there, and this begins us in our head drawing. Okay, so we need to know, how do we connect from here? Okay, and what we have here is you have the clavicle, and then the clavicle comes up into, so this form tops like this, and then on the back side it does the same thing. However, it comes to corners, okay? So almost, if you're thinking about when we go to the top of this form and start to move into the neck, it's, as opposed to being a kind of Pringle-like shape, what we have is we have a shape that's a little bit more, like if we look down on it, it's like this. But this is kind of rounded. So it circles around, and it circles around. It's kind of like, I've heard it described as being like a bow and arrow. You know, it's like this, and that's the, here's, so it goes like down and up and down and up and back around, okay? So it goes down and up, and it hits a corner, and then back around, down and up and back around. So here it goes down and up and back around, down and up and back around. And then that starts to transition us into the neck. And the neck transitions like this. So you have a cylinder coming out for the neck. So we know the cylinder shape, and you can get in and you can set up your planes on the cylinder, but now you want to make the neck more gradual. So here we'll put a cylinder into this shape, And we know that the cylinder sits on the front edge of the rib cage, right? There's the cylinder. Okay, now the back of the neck, it's a gentle curl in. The back of the neck has a gentle, but this will have a squash and stretch. But the back of the neck has a gentle curl in, and the front of the neck, it reaches down almost like, well, so let's say the back of the neck has a gentle curl in. And the front of the neck is, we'll leave it as just a little bit. So here's the neck, and the front of the neck comes in a like that, and the back of the neck has this gentle curl in. Okay. Okay. Now this takes us to the legs, and here's how the legs connect. So let me see. I'll make a little space here. And if you're thinking of the pelvis as a block, here's the block of the pelvis. Okay. And then what happens is the legs connect on the front of this, like this, and then they go down like that, and they connect like this. Okay? So they connect on an angle. Up. And again, we can use the Pringle shape. So you go up and over, and before you get to the end, that's where it turns around. Up and over, and before you get to the end, that's where it turns around. So you see how it comes up and grabs hold up front, and then but the back, before you get to the end, it turns around. And so we'll have to see the figure from the back to really understand it. Okay, here's our figure from the back. Now I'm going to bulk these shapes out a little bit. In the back of the form, starting with moving into the butt, when you come down this way, so here's your Pringle form, and it's lower in the back, okay? It's lower in the back. There's obviously a spine down the middle, but the Pringle is lower in the back as the rib cage comes down. And here is the Pringle of this, which comes up and it hits that triangle and it goes back up and around to the front. Okay, and the leg, as this leg comes on to this part of the form, the front of it is high and it Pringles around and it hides in there. Okay, so this one we're not going to see. It would be like there and come out like this. Okay, so but that's how it's connecting. I'm going to show you, I'm going to draw through this so you can see the connection. Okay, so it's connecting like that. Connecting like that. And then I'll get rid of this and I'll get rid of that. And so you can see the connection there. And here, the back of the form there goes up and it hits those points and then it turns down and I'm drawing through the form there. And in the back of the form, the neck works like this. The neck comes, this head is low and small. So, but the neck comes up almost, I'm exaggerating it right now, but you see how it's almost like that right in there. Okay. And let's turn this around now and look at it from the front side. Direction, Pringle, center, squash, overlap for the top of the leg, cutting through in a Pringle that wraps up and around, overlap for the top of the leg, wrapping around in a Pringle that comes out low, right? Overlap. Up top, down, okay, around, and in the front, we'll see the cylinder, and in the back, you'll see those lines. Okay. Okay, moving into the knee, we know that this is like this is round, and then the top of the knee we like to relate to it as square. And if you bring the top of the knee down square, and the shape that we end up having to transition into down here is a triangle. Okay, and so what happens is is very complicated. It sort of comes down in a point to that, and then the lower part overlaps. Here's your overlap. The lower part, so the upper part overlaps like this, and the bottom part overlaps like that. So the upper part bites like this, and then in the front drops down, so it's a shape like this. And then in the front, it sort of drops down in a low point. It's like a Pringle again. These are all Pringles. And so here we can, the front drops down to the kneecap, right? So here is the patella. There's the patella, but it comes down to a point, and then the calf comes through like this. It comes up high on the side and through. And in the back, it overlaps this way. The muscle is lower on the inside than on the outside, but it goes kind of like that. You don't want to make too big of a deal of that. And it's kind of nice if in the calf you see this rhythm. You see the way that the calf is becoming kind of an S by having the inner muscle low, the outer muscle high, the inner muscle low, the outer muscle high, curling around. Inner muscle low, outer muscle high, grabbing hold, grabbing hold. And then transitioning into the foot, again, another Pringle. This time overlapping this way, and you can see the foot comes out like this. By using the Pringle and then replicating it down at the end of the toes, you really get volume in the foot, and that's nice. And the other thing to know is here's from the back, the foot doesn't, it comes out past the end of the leg there. And here's that Pringle, goes down. Here's the Pringle, it goes down. Whoopsies. Okay, so and then the arm overlaps. You've got the circle of the deltoid, which comes up and it's split in two here, and it overlaps and overlaps and overlaps, and you've got a Pringle here and a Pringle there, and down into the hand. Pringle into the deltoid, okay? You can do a Pringle here into the deltoid, a Pringle here into the front of the arm, down into a square, and we'll address the hand later this week. Okay, so what I want you to do is I want for you to now add this to your gestures. So here's, I'll do just a simple gesture, okay? And I'm going to copy a gesture from Bridgman, who I really love. So that's going to be my shoulder mass. That's going to be my hip volume. I'm going to rush for the ground. Here's my leg volume. There's my leg gesture. Drop down to the knee. I'm lowering the knee. That's cool. out to the foot. Foot will go here. Okay. Here's the head. Here's where the head volume is going to be. Arms coming out in this direction, and the other arm is going to be going back. Okay. So the first thing that I want to do is solidify the directionality of my planes. So there's going to be my sagittal line. It'll cross this way. If I'm looking for the head volume is going to live in here, and I'm going to drop it. I'm going to turn it this way. I'm going to turn it to the left, and I'm going to do that. That's the sagittal line. That's the temporal line. That's the transverse line, and that's the coronal line. That brings this back. The face mask drops down in this direction. Okay. Here's the cylinder of the neck is going to go to here. And here's the transition into the shoulders. That's the gentle transition into the shoulders. I think I have to bring this line upwards. And here's looking down into there. Here's the bottom of the rib. Looking down, there's the Pringle. Okay. And now here is the pelvis. Okay, the Pringle of the pelvis. The squash in there, the stretch out here. Okay, the Pringle of the thigh connection. The Pringle of the thigh connection, wrapping back around, overlapping, leaving that early. Into the knee. There's the square of the knee, and then the Pringle of the side plane, and the overlapping, the reverse overlapping of the side plane. Here's the square of this knee, and the side plane overlapping, the lower interior turn into the foot with the Pringle of the foot grabbing the sides and over. There's the volume of the foot. Okay, here's this leg. It's gotten out of proportion. The Pringle of the knee, grabbing, wrapping. The Pringle of the connection. There's a connection. The shape of the deltoid, the box of the deltoid, grabbed hold of here. It Pringles over that way and grab hold of like that. This comes down here and grab hold of like that. You see the Pringle? And down into the hand. Deltoid, grabbing hold of, okay, bicep, tricep, and now the flexors grabbing hold of okay. Well, this one turned out poorly. Better. And the only thing that I wasn't able, well, I guess there's a lot that I wasn't able to show you, but one little piece at a time, okay? So connecting really as the forms connect, what it's coming down to is looking for this shape and how this shape can assist in connecting forms, okay? And I basically use one there and 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 one here, okay? These all end up being in one here and one here, and these all end up being this way of making our connections much more interlocked and much more graceful.